Good morning. Welcome to this celebration of the life of Robert Bob Sundstrom. Thank you so much for gathering together today to remember and celebrate Bob. I'm the Reverend Mary Geer, minister for the Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm joined today by Troy Fisher, OUUC's music director, and we are so grateful for all who helped create and support this sacred space today. We are streaming and recording the service today. So for those who are here in person, if you could turn off your Wi-Fi or turn off your devices altogether, that would be a great help for sound and bandwidth. And it's a testament to our devices that pretty much the whole room went for their phones. We are so grateful for the gift of your presence today in whatever way you have arrived. We gather here today to grieve the loss of Bob Sundstrom, a husband, brother, uncle, friend, an adventurer, lover of beauty and of nature. Bob shared his love of nature and of birds with so many people, and he touched so many lives throughout his own life. Today, may we be grateful for the love that he cultivated and that he left behind. Bob died almost a year and a half ago now, on May 16th, 2021, at the age of 69. Bob lived with leukemia for several years, and he died from a recurrence. Today, may we remember Bob's wholeness and the beauty of his spirit as we acknowledge the reality of his dying. We grieve Bob's passing in a time of so much grief. Today, we acknowledge together all the losses that we have experienced these past few years. And we especially hold Bob's family and friends in love on this day. May we be united in the conviction that the light of life and love is never extinguished, but it lives on through us. It is the practice of this community to light a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. Today we light our chalice with these words from Mira Mikowitz. We light this chalice, which transforms wax into pure light and warmth, to remind us of our own living, transforming the stuff of this world into the love and activity of our daily lives. As we remember Bob, may today bring forth transformation in ourselves, from grief, healing, from memory, wholeness, and from celebration, love.
Blackbirds singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arrive. of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night.
I knew I should have spoken before he played that song. Oh, gosh, but Reverend Mary told me that today's a day for tears, so there, no, nobody's going to be surprised. Welcome. Hello, and welcome, dear family and friends. Thank you so much for being here today, in person and online. I'm so glad we're here to celebrate Bob's life finally. Bob was a wonderful man, and he had a wonderful life. He had a family who dearly loved him, cherished friends, work that he loved, and anyone and everyone who benefited from his expertise knew he was exceptional at it. He was generous with his talents and incredibly patient, He loved to teach, to write, and mostly his passion was to introduce people to the beauty of the natural world. I went through a lot of slides to put a slideshow together, and cruises and cloud forests and polar bears and penguins, and he had such an adventurous life. He loved reading and writing and teaching, and of course, drinking fine scotch. Upon meeting someone new who asked what he did for a living, Bob would say, "I'm a nature tour leader, and I write about birds for a nationally syndicated radio show." They were like, wow. What an amazing job. And it was, and he knew it. He had remarkable adventures as he traveled the world, and you will see some of those photos. Thank you, friends and family, for being here. Please take a moment to write a memory if you want. We put some cards and pencils on the chairs, and please stay for lunch afterwards in the Commons, or I'm gonna have to take home a lot of sandwiches. All right, thank you for being here.
As Sally said, one of Bob's many talents was as a writer. And so, of course, he wrote his own obituary. These are Bob's words. Bob Sundstrom passed away on May 16th, 2021, after a recurrence of leukemia. He died comfortably and in good spirits at his home in the country along Scatter Creek in South Thurston County, in the company of his wife, Sally Al-Hadaf, and their 3 cats. He was 69. Birds were a great love for Bob as well as his career. He earned a living as a full-time professional birder, leading tours to many parts of the world for Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours, conducting van trips from Mercer Island, teaching and writing for radio. For 30 years, Bob taught birding by ear for Seattle Audubon Society, helping many to know and appreciate the voices of birds. His writer's voice will continue to be heard through nearly 900 bird note radio stories he authored as the lead writer. He continued writing into his final days, including a final story on May 14th. He thanks founder Chris Peterson and executive director Sally Bodie for the opportunity to be part of the BirdNote team. He was overwhelmed by the gratitude expressed for his career work in his last months. Bob liked to say that birds were his day job, but not his obsession. When not birding or writing, Bob loved books, music, bicycling, and single malt scotch. He and Sally took great pleasure in gardening and tending the natural habitats on their rural acres. He became a great admirer of classic literature and poetry. He earned his PhD in cultural anthropology at the University of Washington. Bob is survived by his wife, Sally Al-Hadaf, brother Bill Sundstrom, and nephews Ethan and Aaron Sundstrom. His loving parents, Mary and Bill, are deceased. He thanks many friends and colleagues, the Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation, and Sally's family for their loving support. Sally and Bob had 28 wonderful years together. They loved watching the swallows glide and the ravens soar above their camas-covered meadow along Scatter Creek. Those were Bob's words. These are mine. Bob was a beloved member of the OUUC community for several years. He was known as a kind and compassionate man who was of service to this community in so many ways. I got to know Bob through his service as a celebrant on the worship arts team. He always brought interesting readings and ideas to our worship planning, and he brought a calm, gentle presence to this pulpit. Bob brought the same presence to our wider community. And although he might not have named it as such, Bob knew how to hold sacred space, bringing reverence to the mystery of our gatherings and what is bigger than we are as individuals. I am grateful to have known Bob and to have led worship with him. At the end of his obituary, Bob placed a quote from Hilary Mantel in The Mirror and the Light. Quote, "If a man should live as if every day is his last, he should also die as if there is another day to come and another after that." The last time I talked with Bob, he said to me, "Perhaps I'll see you in the beyond." I imagine Bob's version of the beyond has birds, good scotch, good books, and the love of family and friends. May his spirit rest in peace in such a place.
Go ahead, Barry. I think they're ready for you.
Okay. Uh, well, thank you. I I knew Bob Sundstrom as a colleague and as a friend. I joined Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours as a guide back in the mid 1990s, and it was in the ensuing years that I got to know Bob and to work with him a great deal. And it wasn't just the fact that I worked with Bob. It was that I met Bob and knew him at a time in my life where I was only 8 months out of college. I was still pretty undisciplined and immature in some important ways. And I was given a job. I entered into a profession of which I did not necessarily know a lot about. And being paired up with Bob basically showed me what it meant to be a professional. I saw in Bob in those years all the things that we've heard today so far: a man of towering integrity, a man of high character, a man of discerning taste, sound judgment, all these things. Bob was quite possibly the best organized person that I ever knew. Bob had a unique ability, such an easygoing way about him that he could get along with anybody. Through all the years that I worked with Bob, I never saw him once be crosswise with any of our clients, any of our travelers. And in this line of work, when you come into contact with so many hundreds of people, thousands of people over a period of time, that is not a small statement. But in some ways, Bob was kind of like a soulmate in a way, in terms of our shared interests. Obviously, birds and nature, all of that was bedrock stuff for us. But beyond that, Bob was a connoisseur of literature, a big reader. He studied politics. He was interested in the human condition. We've heard about his appreciation for Scotch. It was all these things that came to bear at once that made him so effective at what he did. The last thing that I'm going to say here is that having spent enough time with Bob, I know that despite all these things, the thing that was most important to him was his wife, Sally. We would be leading a tour, and at the very end, he couldn't wait to get home to her. And that impressed me as a man who was still maturing and so on. I felt that Bob was a mentor in so many ways, certainly professionally, but also on a personal basis. And he has been gone for 1.5 years now. And I can tell you that as an organization, his absence is profound. And on a personal basis, Bob was such a unique person that I'll never forget him. I'll never stop missing him. Thank you.
And I'm sure we all know that he is an encyclopedia of knowledge. And as he and I discussed a wide variety of topics, it absolutely amazed me, his depth of knowledge on so many things. I felt as if he was a kind of oracle. So many answers, and so much patience for my own ignorance of so many things. Over the years, I've had many teachers, but Bob is in a league of his own. I remember as a kid bragging on my uncle who traveled the world, guiding tours in the jungles and such. My image of him was a sort of Indiana Jones with binoculars. And as I came to understand how many millions of lives he's touched with his writing as well, my respect for him has only deepened. I'm so proud of what he has done for the world and it is a richer place for his having been in it for so many wonderful years. And I just want to thank Bob for his excellent presence in my life and in the lives of all of us here. He is missed and will be missed and will always be held in fond remembrance in so many of our hearts. I love you, Uncle Bob. Farewell and Godspeed, my friend.
And Bob might appreciate this as I wish to speak a word for joy of knowing Bob and him knowing all of you. I have these notes in my duck pocket, if you recognize this vest. Bob was a calm and undaunted yet buoyant guide to life. And I remember Bob at this moment as we are gathered here as a good friend, a member of my family. We are doubled back in-laws. You can ask me about that, or Sally later. And I knew him as a confidant, someone who sought me out to see what my sense might be of what he found was good and fine in life. He was a man of love and quiet joy, love of Sally, love of church, love of friends. Bob and I shared a devotion to the classics, though he was steadfast in his devotion while I wandered here and there through Don Quixote. And we savored side by side, as you've already heard, many true Scott single malts. On the road, Bob seemed always to be in tune with the best hangout places. He'd stop the Bird Quest for coffee or torquetti and Cleellum. And on an overnight in Omak, after dinner at the Breadline Cafe, he sidled me over to the bar, wanting to know what I thought of his latest find in distilled spirits. That's it, Bob, a distilled spirit. I sat in the back of the bus on bird trips guided by Bob. He was also the driver, enjoying many hours watching his back. I know his shrugs and gestures well. He'd point left. There, off 300 or 400 feet, perched over an irrigated field, eastern kingbirds. Then I'd hear a chorus. Where, Bob? At 10 o'clock. How did he see that bird? I'm thinking, and still driving. So as I started out reading my page 2, he was calm and undaunted, yet buoyant guide to life among our winged sisters and brothers, and to a life in love with being alive in the world. Here's a sample of Bob's buoyancy of spirit from his bird-by-bird report on a 2015 trip east of the Cascades. He wrote, near the railroad ponds, a house wren sang continuously. Huge common mergansers swam nearby. That's relatively huge. A gray catbird posed briefly, and yellow warblers were everywhere. At the hatchery park, we had the view of a lifetime. And all of this is from our point of view where we were standing. We had a view of a lifetime, a singing veery, a surprise black-throated gray warbler, a dancing Nashville warbler, and a dramatic distraction display by a robin. I'm so thankful I was there to witness this. I possess what I found to be a place-based memory that summons Bob's presence. I hear his voice, his call to notice some small detail, rising up whenever my wife Leslie and I pass by one of Bob's bird trip stops at a brook off Camas Creek, a Willapa Bay sandbar, or when musing over an atlas of road trips that I've kept pencil notes on. My map's place names, hand annotated, are now mythical names. Bottle Beach, Squawk Grange, where the hawk hunts like a harrier, and at Omak Inn, the place of departure to the highland lek of courting sage grouse. These memories of Bob at the places he loved to share have a place of their own right here in my heart and yours.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Ritter, Sally's brother, and with me is my wife, Susan. Bob was our brother-in-law. We are grateful to have this opportunity to share a little bit about our relationship with Bob from a family perspective. Thanks for asking us, Sally.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan. We wish we could be right there with you all, but we join you today from Copake Lake, New York. For all of you birders out there, yesterday I saw my first cedar waxwing. And of course, the first person I wanted to talk to was Bob. How I wished I could have told him.
We really didn't get to know Bob for the first years of when he and Sally were together. We were raising a house full of kids and running a business, and they lived in and worked in Seattle. But we had a family tradition, we still do, to celebrate our birthdays, which we always looked forward to. I would see Bob at those times and on the holidays, and he was always friendly but quiet, much like me, at least the quiet type.
As Scott's indicated, for many years, we did not have much of an opportunity just to get to know Bob. Even when they moved to Tenino, he was often off on a global birding adventure. Sally was still working and we were working. So getting together was rare, except for those family gatherings. Once I realized how much he knew about birds, I was delighted. So I would call him or send a picture. The picture was never clear enough truly to make out the bird, or I'd send a little clip of its song. Most of the time, blurry picture or not, Bob was able to help me identify the bird, and Sally was often helpful as well. One of the things both Bob and I learned joining the Ritter clan was that this was a working ranch. Together, we learned a lot about raising cattle, putting in hay every summer, and cutting windfall trees into firewood. That was usually a one-day, all-day work party, and Mom Marilyn would provide an amazing meal for all of us. We would be hungry and tired, but enjoyed the outdoor projects, camaraderie, and all of us just working together.
After one of our wood splitting parties, June 25th, 2005 to be exact, we decided to relax around a big bonfire that night at Mom's. Bob and I sat next to each other and talked of life, travels, and our taste in bourbon and single malt scotch. That was really the first time we had an opportunity to know each other, just discuss different things. The discussion of bourbon and scotch piqued his interest, and he said, "I'll be right back." A few minutes later, he returned with a smile on his face and a bottle of scotch, and he said, "Scott, I think you're really gonna like this." Excuse me. It was Taliskers from the Isle of Skye, Scotland. I had never had it before. It was amazingly smooth but peaty, and we connected on that unlikely substance. And from then on, whenever we would gather for a family function, we would often toast each other with a bit of scotch. We both made sure we always had a good bottle of scotch to share with each other. And Bob had an outstanding collection of scotch from all around the world.
Once Bob was diagnosed as terminal, we wanted to spend as much time as we could with him. Each Thursday, we'd head to Tenino for a few hours. He was such an interesting person with a wealth of knowledge, as you all know. I love that idea of him as Indiana Jones. It just fits him. And during one of those visits, Bob and I learned we had been on the campus at the University of Washington at the same time, taking classes in the same halls. So we figured out our paths had probably already crossed. We shared a love of writing and a mutual admiration for Mark Twain. In looking back, I can see how he would have related to the spirit of adventure, wanderlust, and the love of the outdoors that Mark Twain wrote about. Like me, he also enjoyed his wit and humor. I would say they were definitely similar souls. I was really impressed too with the grace and dignity he accepted his final days and always worked at making our visits uplifting when we were there to lift him up.
When he became wheelchair bound, I would help Sally move him to the porch so he could sit outside, immersed in the bird sanctuary that he and Sally had created. Feel the wind on his face and smell the fresh air. He loved being on their porch and calling out the birds as they would swoop in for food. A regret of mine is I wish I would have taken the time to get to know Bob much sooner. Honestly, the first few years of his life, I had no idea what he did. We miss him a lot, miss our weekly chats after he left. I would have enjoyed traveling with him and Sally on his birding expeditions. If I can pass along any advice to any of you, it would be to see everyone around you as a possible next best friend and seize those moments.
Bob's last Christmas was a difficult one for him and for all of us. He was weak. COVID was an ever-present issue, so gathering together wasn't an option. So all the siblings decided to show up at Bob and Sally's door and surprise him with Christmas carols. It was cold, and much to Sally's chagrin, Bob was not about to stay indoors. So with the guys' help, Sally got him on the porch in his wheelchair, wrapped snugly in blankets. We hadn't practiced, but between Sally's and Sherry's strong leading voices, we sang 7 carols as Bob sat at the edge of the porch enjoying our choir. We ended with his favorite, Frosty the Snowman. Later that evening, he wrote us all. He said, "Wow, in-laws, I am so grateful for your making time to sing carols at our place. What a brilliant gift. When I tried to sing along, the tears of joy kept streaming. It was wonderful. Thank you all."
We continued our weekly visits, though he was becoming weaker. He still was with it and amazingly always able to carry on a conversation with little or no effort. Occasionally, he would doze off and we would wait for him to awake and say our goodbye. As we got ready to leave one of our last visits in May, he gave me a beautiful bottle of, you guessed it, Talisker Scotch. I will probably never drink it.
It's okay, good, Karen. And it sits on his shelf so he can think of Bob and remember him. On our life's journeys, we meet many people along the way. I don't personally believe in coincidence. Our steps are ordained, and we were meant to meet Bob. He's one of those people who add immensely to your life, no matter the time or the place he joins your journey. I'm grateful he was part of mine. I have a much better appreciation of nature, most animals, except squirrels, which we discovered we both disliked equally. But more importantly, the family of birds. And because of Bob, I strive to seek them out, know them, and learn their essence. Bob was so many things to so many people, as so many of you have already shared. He was a husband, son, brother, brother-in-law, uncle, friend, scholar, philosopher, scientist, ornithologist, a world traveler and leader, author, a writer. In fact, as we know, he was writing the week he died. Who do any of us know that collected so many titles in one lifetime and humble? Bob was a very humble spirit. But fortunately for the Ritter clan, he was a member of our family. And that bond is strong forever. I miss you, Bob. I leave you all today with a great saying from the wit and humor of Mark Twain. Life is short. Break the rules. forgive quickly, kiss slowly, laugh uncontrollably, and never regret anything that makes you smile.
Sally, my sister,
I can say it for you.
such a wonderful man for you. Go ahead.
For you to spend part of your life with, and he was a great addition to our family.
And I say a farewell
With a Scottish toast. I'd like you to listen carefully, everyone, because you will see it is really a toast back to yourself, which Bob would have really enjoyed. Want me to say it? Here's the toast. I drink to the health of another, and the other I drink to is he, in the hope that he drinks to another, and the other he drinks to is me. And that's by the Reverend Edward Bannerman Ramsey.
Rest in peace, my friend.
Memorizing the stuffed toy platypus. I always Birdbook, by pretty much. I'm Tanner. I'm going to talk about Uncle Bob. This is for anyone who wanted to listen to this. Whenever I see birds, I will always remember my Uncle Bob and the memories I have of our time spent together. We would sit together looking at pictures of birds on his phone or in books. I probably asked him 1,000 questions. Usually he had an answer for everything, but I think I taught him some things too about prehistoric birds like the terner and the quetzal and how to tame a condor. I know I taught him a lot about condors because they are my favorite. He would have me listen to bird sounds and taught me how birds fly. I had a lot of fun with him. He also made me laugh when he would show me pictures of funny looking birds. He gave me some great books, my favorite being Sue Sibley's Bird Book. I pretty much memorized and stuffed toy platypus. I like to go over to Uncle Bob and Sally's to play with their cats and watch the birds out the window, and I enjoyed my walks with him up and down Mole Street looking for birds. One time we looked out in the birdhouse to see the babies and then laughed when a swallow dove at us to get us away. One time he and Aunt Sally came to visit at the beach, and we had a good time walking to the jetty to look for seals and tide-pool creatures. Uncle Bob was really patient and nice. I want to keep his spirit alive by being more like him. Super nice, smart, and patient. Being patient is really hard for me, but I think that is what made him so strong and wise, like a great blue heron waiting to catch a fish. I really miss him, and I wish he was still with us so I could thank him for teaching me so much and spending all that time with me. I hope he will watch down on me and that I can make him proud.
Good morning. My name is Chris Anderson, and I would like to share a few thoughts and memories of Bob Sundstrom. Having had several other speakers before me, I see that many people had very much the same impression and I guess education from Bob that I had, but I'm going to go ahead with some of my prepared remarks. We first met Bob and Sally in May of 1995. As some of you know, a group of us were getting together at the Yellow Point Lodge on Vancouver Island the first weekend in May of every year. And somehow, one night, Bob and Sally ended up sitting at our table for dinner. I think that at first they were taken aback by this group of rowdies, but they did their best to fit in, and fit in they did. They have been our friends ever since. What impressed me most about Bob was the incredible range of his interests and knowledge. And of course, that's a recurring theme today. We all know Bob for his knowledge of birds and all things birds related, but his interests were so much broader. For instance, did you know that Bob was very knowledgeable in architecture? I first realized this when near the end of one of our early Yellow Point weekends, Bob collected all the empty champagne bottles around Mike and Liz Ann's deck and proceeded to build a pyramid, 6 bottles high and 6 bottles wide. Now, if you don't think that that requires a lot of architectural skills, just drink a few glasses of champagne and then try it sometime. Seriously, Bob was interested in almost everything you can imagine. And the beauty of that is that it rubbed off on those around him. One year he was studying clouds, and for weeks after our May weekend, I found myself looking at the clouds and marveling at their variety and complexity. I also learned a bit about what they told us about our weather and our atmosphere. Then there was Bob's reading project, in which he read the biography of every president the United States had since independence. Try that in your spare time. And he was interested in classical literature. At one point, he was reading Homer's Iliad and had formed a phone-in, or maybe it was a Zoom-in, book club with whom he had weekly meetings to discuss their impressions. For me, the incredible range of this man's knowledge became evident when I started sending him a few pictures when he was confined to indoors while undergoing his treatment for leukemia. At first, I sent him a few bird pictures, and Bob always responded, maybe not the same day, but soon. Often his response had nothing to do with the bird in the picture, but instead dealt with some other detail he saw. So my focus widened. Soon I was sending pictures of trees and plants, of bark texture and color combinations, mushrooms and insects. We even got into how water freezes at the edge of a flowing river and how snow accumulates on and then hangs onto branches. I found myself seeing things I had been looking at for years, but I was really only seeing them for the first time. Referring to an earlier comment, I just realized that what Bob actually taught me was that every space is a sacred space if you take the time to analyze it. The irony of this was that here was Bob, confined to the indoors and fighting for his life, teaching me far away new ways to look at nature. What a gift. Bob, wherever you are now, I know that those around you will be learning a great deal. Keep up the good work. We all miss you.
We've heard so many stories of Bob today, and there are more stories and memories here in this space with us. We make time to hear some of them now. For those online, I invite anyone who wishes to share a quality or a brief memory about Bob in the chat. You can write it there, and we'll make sure to share it with Sally and Bob's family. For those who are here in person, if you have a story that must be told today, I invite you to come forward now. And remember, there will be lots of time for sharing during the reception after the service. We'll begin with any members of Bob's family who might like to share a memory or a story.
Thank you. And Bob was very special to all of us in our family, but I have a special memory of him. One time when I was down at the house and he got a notification that there was a bird that he wanted to see, and it was up by La Conner. And I said, well, how are you going to find it? How are you going to know where it is? And he said, oh, don't worry, we'll find it. So we drove up there to La Conner, and when we got close to where he thought it would be, there were all kinds of people out with telescopes. So we had no problem finding, but then I couldn't see the bird off in the bushes. And it was, I finally found it with his help. It was a great gray owl, 3 feet tall, the biggest owl I had ever seen in my life. And so after that, I realized when he could find something, he found it.
And now, any members of our community and anyone else who might like to share, I invite you to come on up. Or I can bring you the microphone if you prefer.
Good morning. I'm Chris Peterson, and knowing Bob changed my life. I was fortunate to know him over many years and in some very important capacities. To begin, my mother, Theo North, traveled with Bob on some of those birding trips to the Pribilof Islands in Alaska, to southern Texas along the Rio Grande, and so many places in between. My sister, Patty North, became proficient in identifying birds by their songs and their calls after she took Bob's birding by ear class. Patty then went on to help organize several master birder classes for Seattle Audubon. My husband, Todd Peterson, had the distinct privilege of editing many of those 900 stories that Bob wrote for the radio series Bird Note. They had a wonderful working relationship. Bob helped so many of us see so deeply into the natural landscape. Those of you that were lucky enough to hike with him in his beloved Swakane Canyon could just feel his delight and his fascination there. It's a steep canyon in central Washington, and the elevations change quickly. And with each change, there's a whole host of new plant and bird species. And Bob's detailed knowledge revealed that world to us. Likewise, whenever I'm wandering the floor of a moist coniferous forest in the fall, not only do I listen for the two-tone call of Bob's favorite bird, the varied thrush, but I look for its black and orange dappled back. I know what to look for because Bob explained that that bird's back mimics the little spots of sunlight that filter through the canopy onto that forest floor. As the founder of BirdNote, I had a dream, but until you assemble a team of people, it's just a dream. When Bob said yes to assuming the role of lead writer, he, along with Dennis Paulson and Gordon Orions, provided the knowledge and the scientific credibility that ensured that BirdNote would be welcome on the national scene. That's what they brought with them. It's been on the air now since 2005, nearly 20 years. The birds that Bob gave voice to could not have had a more sensitive, kinder interpreter for their lives and their needs. Through his storytelling, he was able to connect listeners to the natural world and at the same time bring messages of reassurance, hope, and inspiration. His stories encourage people to be curious and respectful, and by providing a reason to conserve the resources that we share with the birds, the air, the water, the land. His stories have helped give birds a fighting chance for their survival. Bob was able to make the intriguing ways of birds come alive for millions of listeners. He had a nearly singular ability to build a bridge between the birds and us. When we think of ways to describe Bob, words such as humble, kind, gifted, and careful spring to mind. Also, he was an exemplary model for following one's interests deeper and deeper and then wider. He achieved something few people achieve when he made a life out of following his passion, but not without Sally. He had a wonderful partner in creating such a life. When I sat down to write this tribute, something special happened. There's an old madrona tree at my house that has two strong trunks. They form a slight V as they rise skyward. They lean a little to the east. This protects the tree from the prevailing wind. Just as I began to write, two handsome northern flickers, a male and a female, flew onto that tree. They landed really close to one another, and as they clung to one of those trunks, they began bobbing their heads up and down and their necks back and forth. I hadn't ever seen them display that way before. And as I often do when I'm searching for an answer about bird behavior, when I want to know why do birds do what they do, I say to myself, Bob would know. Thank you.
Okay, I think they're ready for you, Bill.
Thank you. Do I have to do anything?
Nope, go ahead and share.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I was online. Hi, this is Bill Sundstrom and my wife, Sue. Bob and I were both born in Bethesda Naval Hospital and grew up in Silver Springs, Maryland, where we had a field across from our house, and we would explore and turn over rocks and stumps and catch snakes and catch frogs here and there and bring them home, of course, to my mother's delight, and things like that. When I was 10, so he would have been 9, we moved to Florida and spent about 10 years there. We did a lot of fishing, often together, and we did a lot of exploring the newly pumped up sand where they were building the canals in our community to find shark's teeth. And we found thousands of shark's teeth. And he actually taught me how to see them, how to pick out the little tiny black speck
in this huge field of white, and walk right up to it and pick it up. So that kind of observation, acute observation, happened early on. And the other thing we did there, besides the fishing, was we'd often have contests to describe or talk about various kinds of fish and birds that were in our reference material that my dad had. So it was kind of a contest to see who could remember or come up with some special characteristic of one. And that pattern, of course, just continued for both of our lives. I went into electronics and he went into what you all know about, and but I never lost my appreciation for the birds in particular. I have 5 bird feeders now, and lots of species in the backyard. Thanks to Sue. Sue bought them to give me another thing to do in my retirement. So, and so, well, let's see. So Bob was the best man at our wedding 42 years ago, and so he's known Sue a long time, and then we got to know Sally, and immediately felt like we had a close family bond with her and her family too. So, yeah, I won't go into too much more, but we actually never went on a tour together. I never went on one of his led tours, but we were doing basically the same thing most of our lives whenever we were together. So that's kind of how that was. I don't drink scotch. Yeah, I'm a white wine guy when I drink it, which is almost never. But I don't know. It's hard to say what I feel really so deeply, but I still want to pick up the phone and call him. I'm still processing the fact that he's not here physically, but he'll always be here spiritually. And thanks for your time.
I'm not very good at speaking through the tears, but both miss him a lot. And Sally, we're thinking about you all the time, even if we don't communicate often. But Bob was special, and we'll always miss him, and we care about him a great deal. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Glad you could join us on Zoom. Are there any other stories to be shared today?
My name's Tim Ransom. I'm a member of this congregation, and I'm one of those loathsome people that is an amateur birder that really thinks he knows about birds. I try and teach people who don't know anything as much as I can, and I'm always overbearing about it. I think it was over 5 years ago now, I ended up going on a bird tour in South County. And there were 2 gentlemen leading the tour, one of whom had been had a presence in this congregation for a while, and so I knew vaguely, and the other I didn't at all. And it was a tour about bird sound. Within about 5 minutes, of course, it was Bob, was saying things like, past those trees and in the next grassy area are 2 blue somethings, and I listened really hard and could not hear a thing. But we'd go around the bend and through the trees and into the grassy area, and there they were. And I went away from that day going, who is this magician, that can do that? And could it possibly be in my future that I could learn how to do that? And I decided no, I didn't have, I didn't have enough time left. But and then this magician showed up here, and it was, I didn't really know what to make of that. I mean, this is a pretty spiritual place, and here was this guy who was obviously so plugged in. But anyway, I got to know him a little bit, and then you all had a auction item that was a tasting of, I think, wine and beer, as I remember, wine and scotch. And I got there, and I was one of the few people that went directly to the scotch end of that continuum. And there was Bob, of course. And I think it was, as I remember, it was a flight. You got to taste a flight. And I got talking with Bob, and indicating an interest in that I had been a Scotch drinker for a long time. And then he said the magic words, which was just a minute, I'll be right back. And like as has been mentioned before, he went and got something really special. I'm afraid I don't remember what it was, because soon after that, I said to Bob, I was a Scotch drinker, but I had become a drinker of Irish whiskey. And he said, just a minute, I'll be right back. There was no way I was going to get ahead of this guy. I could tell that. My main regret is that I didn't spend more time with Bob. He was obviously a fantastic guy, and I think I could have learned twice my lifetime's worth of knowledge about the world and how special a place it is from him. He'll be missed.
I'm Zoe Myers. I'm a member of this congregation, and I first met Bob at Joe and Sue's poetry gathering in the fall of 2019. And we were just beginning to get to know each other when he got sick, and I wanted to do something, and there really wasn't anything I could do. And then he made an appearance on After Church with Melanie Ransom. And Melanie asked him, he was already quite ill, what can people do? And he said, well, if you want to, give me a call and read me a poem. And so I took him up on that. I started searching for poems about birds. I never knew Pablo Neruda wrote so many odes to birds. And I would email him every week or so to see if he had the energy. And the calls weren't long, maybe 15 minutes. And he was such a good listener. I'd read him the poem, and we'd sit in silence a little bit. And he just had such a good critical ear about poems, and often corrected the writer's take on what that bird did or did not do. And I was just so pleased to be of service, but also so grateful. It was such a gift that he gave me. And I know there were others that also called and read poems to him. But it was such a gift that he gave us in the last months of his life, to spend this time with us, sharing this joy we had of poetry. And like Tim, I too am, so sorry that I didn't get to know him better and spend more time with him. But I still read a new poem, and I too want to call him and share it and pick it apart. And I recommend poetry for all occasions. So, thank you.
Hi, my name's Bobby Murray, and I also am a member of the congregation. My gift from Bob was when my son was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. He was there for me every step of the way. There wasn't a Sunday that he didn't stop and give me a hug and talk to me about, ask me how David was and where we were, and explain things that I didn't understand about the stem cell replacement procedures. And he just was there constantly for me. I couldn't have made that journey as well without him. I miss him.
Thank you all so much for your wonderful remembrances of Bob. Sally put together these photos of Bob's adventures through his life. As Zoe and others mentioned, Bob was a lover of poetry. This poem is one that he cherished and shared widely. It was the first poem he ever sent me. It reflects Bob's open and generous heart and spirit and his immense gratitude for life itself. We offer it in its entirety today with gratitude for permission to do so from Copper Canyon Press. It's titled Variations on a Theme from Collected Poems 1996 to 2011 by W.S. Merwin. Thank you, my lifelong afternoon, late in this season of no age. Thank you for my windows above the river. Thank you for the true love you brought me to when it was at last time. And for words that come out of silence and take me by surprise and have carried me through the clear day without once turning to look at me. Thank you for friends and long echoes of them. And for those mistakes that were only mine. For the homesickness that guides the young plovers from somewhere they loved before. They woke into it in another place they loved before they ever saw it. Thank you, whole body and hand and eye. Thank you for sights and moments known only to me, who will not see them again, except in my mind's eye, where they have not changed. Thank you for showing me the morning stars and for the dogs who are guiding me. And so it is with gratitude, thanks for the life of Bob Sundstrom, that we end today. May his spirit know beauty and joy, and may a healing come to the hearts of those who mourn his passing. Our grief today is holy proof that Bob's life touched ours in a profound way. It is the mark of love, the mark of connection, the mark of a life so well lived. We have outlasted our flame, and yet the flame lives on. And I'll close with these words from Kenneth Collier. I do not know where we go when we die, and I do not know what the soul is, or why death is, or when, or why. What I know is that the song once sung cannot be unsung, and the life once lived cannot be unlived, and the love once loved cannot be unloved. May peace be with us all. For those online today, thank you so much for your presence with us. And for those here in person, please feel free to gather for refreshments and conversation in the Commons. Some family and friends will move to the columbarium for a private interment of Bob's ashes, and they will join you at the reception shortly. As the music begins, please allow the family to exit first.